loud. Okay. Oh, can you hear the baby crying? Okay, welcome to the Scottsdale, Arizona Big Book Workshop. Today is Saturday, June 26th. My name is Carol. I'm a compulsive eater and I'm your host for today. Our co-hosts are Sue L. and Nancy. Nancy's going to be conducting the Q&A portion after the workshop is over, after Harlan is finished speaking. Let's see, please remain muted for the speaker portion of the meeting, and please refrain from using the chat box while our speaker is speaking. After he's done talking, you guys are welcome to use the chat box to share information, find sponsors, or whatever else you need. I'm going to post the links to previous recordings and the seventh tradition in the chat box. If you'd like any information, please go to scottsdalebigbook.com. These recordings are also available on Podbean at scottsdalebigbookstudy.podbean.com. On YouTube, you can find them by searching for Scottsdale Big Book Study. We also have an unofficial WhatsApp group, and also we have Big Book meetings in this room using this exact Zoom link 5 days a week, Sunday through Thursday. Friday is the only day we don't have a meeting going in here. And all that information can be found if you go to scottsdalebigbook.com. Thank you for allowing me to be of service, and I'm going to turn things over to Harlan at this time.
Thanks, Carol. Thanks very much. And wow, it is a beautiful summer Saturday, and I'm just so honored that you've taken a few minutes of it to join us. June 26, 2021. And I know that in Arizona, it's absolutely gorgeous. And I hope that it is where you are too, whether you're listening to this live or you're listening to this on a podcast. I hope it's as beautiful where you are today. We have been in the chapter to wives, and there's some possibility we're going to finish that chapter today, but if we do, we do. If we don't, we don't. But we have been talking about the types of drinkers, 1, 2, and 3, and 1, 2, 3, and 4. And type 1 is not an alcoholic, but types 2, 3, and 4 are alcoholics. And I believe that alcoholism and compulsive overeating and addiction are spectrum disorders. Now, in the Q&A that we're going to do today or ever, don't ask me to prove it, because I don't have scientific proof that it is a spectrum disorder. What does that mean, that it's a spectrum disorder? Here's what it means. It affects different people to different bottoms. We all have a bottom. We all have a hell that drove us here into OA in the first place. And nobody comes in here on a winning streak. Nobody comes in here because things went well for them. Let's face it. But we all have different kind of bottoms insofar as I weighed over 700 pounds. I was 335 pounds as a senior in high school. By the time I was 17 years old, I was 300 pounds. And not everybody would do that. Now, there's also anorexics and bulimics that get a high from restricting the amount of food that they take in. So their high is a little different than my high from eating. But we all have several things in common. What do we have in common? There are, no matter where you are, no matter where your depth of bottom is, this is what is consistent. Every one of us, once we have eaten certain foods, will find it impossible to stop on our own because of the physical allergy. Once we have stopped, once we are not eating, we will find it impossible to stay stopped because of the twist of the mind. Every one of us was born with an abnormal physical reaction to the food, the beverage, or the substance. Now, we are going to center in on food because we're compulsive overeaters. For other people, it's liquor. For some other people, it may be gambling. It may be sex or love addiction. It may be pornography. It may be whatever that may be, or trying to control other people. Whatever that may be that sets us off, where does that emanate from? It emanates from the buildup of human emotion that becomes very toxic in our brains, in our minds. And in a normal person, when they have toxicity from the buildup of emotion. They're angry, they're scared, they're happy, they're jealous, they're sad, they're full of remorse. They can do simple things. You see them all the time. They can go and drive out a bucket of golf balls. They can go fishing. They can go to the gym. They can read a book. They can do a bubble bath. They can do lots of different things that will just relieve their tension, relieve their toxicity. In us, we have a brain that is wired to instant gratification. And that instant gratification comes from in my case, because I am a compulsive overeater, it comes from the consumption of certain foods. My brain never says, eat some broccoli. My brain, unless it's bathed in sauce or dressing, or it's bathed in it's cheese or fried or something, my brain says eat candy, eat chocolate, eat whatever that is that I eat, a cheeseburger, whatever that may be at the time, because that will give me what Dr. Silkworth calls the effect. And that effect is that sense of ease and comfort that comes instantly by eating that food. And who doesn't like instant gratification? I know I do. And that instant gratification, unfortunately, in the case of food, is unlike certain other substances. When a person is high on drugs or a person is inebriated, they're drunk on liquor, the high lasts a lot longer than the high that we get from food. My high from food only lasts 9-10 seconds tops, and then I'm irritable again. But the physical allergy has already been triggered by the consumption of the food, and I find it impossible to stop. So we all have that. Now we're going to start on page 115 in the chapter Two Wives, but I just want to sort of bring the point that I'm making home. We often get the false idea that the only ones that we're hurting is ourselves. I remember yelling at somebody many years ago. I smoked cigarettes for a while. I didn't make a career of it. I quit in 1980. I hated when my dad used to smoke cigarettes, and then I became a smoker. And I hated when my mom did certain things or my dad did certain things. And I find that at age 67, it's been a long time since I discovered this, but in many ways, I became them. To my horror, I became them in a lot of different ways. But when I was smoking, I remember somebody yelling at me, "That's a disgusting habit." And I said to them, and it's not true, "The only one I'm hurting is myself. F you." No, no, no. And in this chapter, the following chapter, and the chapter after that, and in our lives, we're going to see that no man or woman is an island. That as we interact with people, be they people on the outskirts of our life, maybe at the office, maybe whatever, and then as it grows more intimate into the immediate family, intimacy, into me I see. The hardest place to work the program is in the home. The easiest place to work the program is in the meetings. Who can't be good for an hour? Come on, you can be good for an hour, or if you go to a meeting that's 90 minutes. I know some of the meetings in LA and some of the international meetings, and there are some meetings in different parts of the country that are 90 minutes. Okay, you can be good for 90 minutes, right? Or if you're in the workplace, that's a little harder to work it than in the meetings, because there's politics involved and money's involved, and sometimes romance is involved, and sometimes different things are involved, perception and self-esteem, and of course pocketbook. But the hardest place to work the program is, was, and always will be with the people closest to us, the intimate, immediate family. Now, I don't have an intimate, immediate family now, but I still have people that are closer to me than others. And so sometimes it becomes more difficult to keep my eye on the ball when I'm with those people because it's a more kind of intimate sort of thing. But whether you are a man or a woman, or you're single or you're married, we are going to interact with other people. And as we do so, some of our defects are going to collide with some of their defects, and it's going to have a bit of a ripple effect. Okay, that brings us to where we are today. We're on page 115, and we're going to begin with, we find that most of this embarrassment is unnecessary. I'll give you a second to get there. Now, we have been talking about discussions about the alcoholic, and that's what they're referring to, excuse me. Page 115, top of the page, we find that most of this embarrassment is unnecessary. While you need not discuss your husband at length, you can quietly let your friends know the nature of his illness, but you must be on guard not to embarrass or harm your husband. One of the things I think that Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous have done to a far better degree than Overeaters Anonymous, not because they're smarter or better than us, but because I think the nature of the illness is such that society is resistant to the obese person having an illness. But where it centers around alcohol or drugs, they have done a much better job than we of educating the public as to the fact that alcoholism, drug addiction is an illness, and it is recognized as an illness by the American Medical Association and the American Psychiatric Association. And that goes back to a little piece of AA history that I want to share with you. Dr. Silkworth wrote the doctor's opinion, and in the first 10 printings of the book, from 1939, April the 10th, 1939, to 1950, he would not allow his name to be published in the book. See, in the books we have today, it says William D. Silkworth, MD. But in the first 10 printings of this book, it did not have that. It had blank, blank MD. Why is that? Well, all he was telling you in his opinion was exactly his opinion. That's why it is the title to that chapter, The Doctor's Opinion. And his opinion was based on observation. Now, in 1949, 1 year previous to the 11th printing of the big book, not the 11th edition, the 11th printing. There's a difference between a printing and an edition. When a book is published, there may be many printings, but there may not be many editions. Editions means they've changed something, they've re-edited, and in our case, the first 164 pages they don't change, and the doctor's opinion doesn't change. But what they do is they change the stories in the back of the book. And that's why you have a lot of the things that are different. A lot of the stories are different. So some will never come out. The pioneer section will never be changed. That would be sacrilegious to change any of that. Now, what happened in 1949? A psychiatrist who just happened to have a patient named Bill Wilson. Bill Wilson was a patient of a psychiatrist named Harry Tiebout, Tiebout, Harry Tiebout, and he wrote Appendix 3 in the back of our book. But Harry Tiebout wrote a paper, and in 1949, as the result of this paper, the American Medical Association and the American Psychiatric Association accepted alcoholism as an illness, and that's the beginning of this acceptance of alcoholism as an illness. And then in 1950, Dr. Silkworth told Bill Wilson, "You can put my name in there now." And in 1951, Dr. Silkworth died. So he never got to see any of the progression of the fellowship beyond 1950. He died in 51. So it's, I don't know how important it is for your recovery, but I like knowing this stuff, so I wanted to share it with you. But Dr. Silkworth is, was, and always will be forevermore our great medical benefactor. Just to be a brat at times when I go to the cardiologist, as I'm going to do in another month, they'll have me put down who's your primary care physician. And it doesn't really matter. I mean, sometimes just to be a brat, I'll put down William Duncan Silkworth, 1293 Central Park West, New York, New York. I'll just do that just to be a nut. But, and I've done that in the past. But the bottom line is, and nobody ever says a word to me. I mean, I've turned in the paperwork. They never question it. But the bottom line, I have a good time with it. Maybe no one else does. I don't know. But I've done that in the past. I'm sorry. I should be ashamed of myself for that. I'm sorry. Okay, let's get back. I'm silly today. I don't know what's wrong with me. I think I must have sat on a feather or something. I don't know. Okay. Okay. Page 115. When you, all right, now I'm back to business here. Okay. When you have carefully explained to such people that he is a sick person, you will have created a new atmosphere. And what is that atmosphere? The atmosphere is we don't act abusive. Hopefully, we don't act abusively towards sick people. You will have created a new atmosphere. Barriers which have sprung up between you and your friends will disappear with the growth of sympathetic understanding. You will no longer be self-conscious or feel that you must apologize as though your husband were a weak character. He may be anything but that. Your new courage, good nature, and lack of self-consciousness will do wonders for you socially. Now, I want to take this idea and I want to bring it out of the arena of the social circle. And what I'd like you to consider this morning here on June the 26th, I want you to consider something. We are people, and in my 42 years in this program, I've seen a lot of people come and go, and I have come and go. We are, by and large, a group of people who are full of self-loathing. Now, on page 17 of the big book of AA, we begin a chapter called There is a Solution. And at the top of page 18 in that chapter, it talks about the illness, and it talks about shattered lives, and it talks about the children. Some of you are children of alcoholics. I am not a child of an alcoholic. I'm a child of two, one of them absolutely crazy, but two compulsive overeaters. And I never saw my mother or father take an alcoholic beverage in their life. Never was such a thing even ever talked about or discussed. My dad got a bottle of whiskey from a lawyer who settled an accident case for him in 1962 or 63. And when he died in 1978, I gave it away to somebody that wanted it. Never thought about opening it or drinking it or anything. Just wouldn't think of it. But the reason I want to talk to you about this today is because we are a group of people generally with a lot of self-loathing. And if you listen to the shares and the questions in the second meeting of A Vision for You, the one that starts at 5 o'clock in the morning Pacific time or 8 o'clock in the morning Eastern time, one of the questions you will invariably get, you'll get this question at least once a month. How do I make amends to myself? How do I get to a relationship with myself that's better than the one I have now? Well, we're not instructed to make amends to ourselves in the conventional 9-step tradition of that, 9-step method of doing that. I don't want to use the word tradition, it could be confusing. I'm not talking about the traditions here at all. I'm talking about the step. I don't make amends to myself per se. I don't hand myself a check or hand myself a letter or hand myself whatever. I don't do that. But for me, and this is just for me, I don't hate myself anymore. I've got other people out there that hate me just fine and they pick up the slack. No, I'm kidding. But the bottom, I hope I'm kidding anyway. Anyway, but the bottom line is still this. The process of liking myself begins with the acceptance of my disease as a crippling factor in my life. I am not so stupid so as to have chosen this. I am not ignorant. And there's a lot of people that say to me, that said to me as a child, you must be stupid. Why do you have to be so fat? Why do you like being fat like that? I didn't like it. I would have rather have been thin. To tell you the truth, I didn't know what it was like to be thin, and I didn't know what it was like to be dead, but I would have rather have been dead than to suffer the indignity of having a scumbag like you calling me stupid when I know I'm not stupid. I am not stupid. I am not ignorant. I am ignorant of some things. I am not crazy. I didn't say to God when I was coming out of the birth canal, by the way, God, put me down for morbid obesity, okay? And God said, got it, Harlan. No, no, I just wanted to be like everybody else. I wanted to be another bozo on the bus. I wanted to be thin. I wanted to be fast on my feet. I wanted to be many, many, many things. I wanted girls to flip their hair when I told stupid jokes, and I wanted them to touch me and laugh. I said, laugh at my joke. I wanted them to like me and want to be with me and want to date me. I wanted a lot of things, but I got something very, very different. So when it talks about accepting alcoholism as an illness in this chapter, which is why I scream into a pillow every time Vision or anybody, we skip over these chapters. I just wish we wouldn't do that. And I'm really grateful to you guys for letting me continue instead of starting over. The relationship that I have with myself, not the one I have with God, maybe a little, it touches on that too. It touches on that too. I'm not going to say what it doesn't affect, because as I'm thinking about it, it affects everything. I often beat myself because I have to still work and I'm not a millionaire and I'm not this. I could have done a lot better, trust me. But you know what? I could have done a lot worse. I had an illness of the mind and an illness of the body that overwhelmed me and crushed me and made me into something that I wasn't from the time I was in diapers. I never had the good years that some other people have. I've heard people in these rooms say, oh, I wasn't afflicted by this until I was 30 or 20. I have a friend of mine that lives in San Francisco, not San Francisco, he lives in the Bay Area. He doesn't live in San Francisco. When we were in our 20s, he was as thin as a stick. He was as thin as a stick. Brilliant, brilliant boy. I've talked about him here before. Wonderful person. He's one of my dearest friends. I was the best man at his wedding. He was the best man at my wedding. I love him and he loves me. He's 400 pounds now. He can't get out of a chair. And he can't even understand what the heck is going on because he's not used to dealing with this. But I was beaten down from the time I was a child. So if you want to take this chapter, Two Wives, and apply it to other areas like yourself, go ahead and do it. And this last paragraph, that we start accepting others for having a disease, is great. What's as important or more so is for me to accept the fact that I have a disease. Why do you think we identify ourselves as compulsive overeaters? Because people need to hear that we're a compulsive overeater? Not even close. The reason that we identify ourselves as compulsive overeaters is because maybe if we say it enough, it will sink in and we can start a process of believing it. We need to hear ourselves say it. It's one thing when someone else says, hey, you're a compulsive overeater. I will resist that. I will put up defenses against that. But when I'm saying it and I'm hearing my own voice say, I'm Harlan and I am a compulsive overeater, it's therapeutic. Because one of the key factors to this disease, and I don't care where your bottom is, I don't care if you're alcoholic number one, two, or drinker number one, two, or three. I don't care if you're drinker number 37 or you're whatever you are. You have a disease, and one of the things that this disease will tell you, and it will tell it to you very convincingly, is everything's okay. It's everybody else. And if they would just stick to your script, you wouldn't be eating Kentucky Fried Chicken at 2 o'clock in the morning in your car during a snowstorm. So we can blame others. What are the four things all addicts love to do, boys and girls? They lie to themselves and others. They assign blame. They keep score and they fight battles that just don't exist. And I have made chicken an endangered species and cows an endangered species and shrimp an endangered species while I stewed about how horrible someone was to me, and I excused eating. And where this comes to fruition is in self-loathing. And one of the things that's important for me to share is the liking of myself begins when I accept that I have a disease. Okay, let's move on. Page 115. The same principle applies in dealing with the children. Unless they actually need protection from their father, it is best not to take sides in any argument he has with them while drinking. Use your energies to promote a better understanding all around. Then that terrible tension which grips the home of every problem drinker will be lessened. In other words, stay in your hula hoop. Stay in your hula hoop. Bottom of 115. Frequently you have felt obliged to tell your husband's employer and his friends that he was sick when, as a matter of fact, he was tight. I know this will come up, so I'll answer it now. Tight is another word for drunk. You don't see that today. Hey, where's Fred? He's tight. You don't see that today. But in those days,
very nice. You want me to show this?
Carol, in
No.
those days, tight
Oh.
was another.
Harlan, can you unmute? You got
Okay.
muted in the
Tight
foray.
was just another word for drunk. Avoid answering these inquiries as much as you can whenever possible. Let your husband explain. In other words, we sometimes need to own up to the fact that we're sick and that what we've done is part of that disease. Your desire to protect him should not cause you to lie to people when they have a right to know where he is and what he's doing. Discuss this with him when he is sober and in good spirits. Ask him what you should do if he places you in such a position again, but be careful not to be resentful about the last time he did so. In other words, create no catastrophe for others or yourself. Prevent no catastrophe for others, but prevent them for yourself. Do not shield the addict from the consequences. You're not doing them any favors if you do. I'm on 116. There's another paralyzing fear. You may be afraid your husband will lose his position. You are thinking of the disgrace and hard times which will befall you and the children. This experience may come to you, or you may already have had it several times. Should it happen again, regard it in a different light. Maybe it will prove a blessing. It may convince your husband he wants to stop drinking forever. And now you know that he can stop if he will. Time after time, this apparent calamity has been a boon to us, for it opened up a path which led to the discovery of God. What are they talking about here, guys? I didn't used to spit when I talk, but I guess having hair in your ears and spitting when you talk, I guess that comes with a lot of birthdays. I don't know. You blow out too many birthday candles, you get hair in your ears and you spit when you talk. I guess nobody told me that when I was younger, but I found that to be the case. Okay. What we're talking about here is we're going to reach our bottoms. We're going to reach hell. And for us, hell has a trap door. Sometimes we think, well, if we went back into the food, this is how horrible it would be. You'll wish it was that good, because that hell that you have pictured in your mind, if you go back into the food, that hell has a trap door, which leads to a much lower bottom than what you can imagine. Why is that? Because the disease is progressive. The disease is progressive. And that's why our recovery must also be progressive. And I have this conversation every day. We have to do more and we have to do different for ourselves, or the disease will overtake us. The disease feeds on our complacency, our unwillingness to do more, our unwillingness to shake it up a bit. This is where the disease will overtake you. This is a very serious aspect of it, and it's very important that we give it the credibility that it deserves. A very, very important aspect of this disease. We have elsewhere remarked how much better life is when lived on a spiritual plane. If God can solve the age-old riddle of alcoholism, he can solve your problems too. We wives found that, like everybody else, we were afflicted with pride, self-pity, vanity, and all the things which go to make up the self-centered person. We were not above selfishness or dishonesty. As our husbands began to apply spiritual principles in their lives, we began to see the desirability of doing so too. Everybody that you know and everybody that you will ever know has one thing in common. They're human beings. And as human beings, they're often going to be ego driven. And they're going to seek to get their way in things just like we do. The only difference is they will not seek out food to relieve them when things don't go our way. And it's very, very important to remember that I give you the perspective of the compulsive overeater who is on the obese side of the equation. If we get to a face-to-face convention one of these days, hopefully. Now, the World Convention is going to be face-to-face. That's going to be in Orlando in August. But if we ever get back to a face-to-face convention, I could introduce you to somebody that lives in California, or I have friends in other areas too, Colorado and so on. And this person, I could say, here's this person. And you would think that they were a movie star. You'd look at them and you'd say, wow, what are they doing here? What on earth are they doing here? They have no problem with their weight. They get a certain high. They get a certain effect. Excuse me, I couldn't think of the word. Effect, as Dr. Silkworth calls it, from not eating. They are restrictors and they are anorexic bulimic. And if you looked at this person, you would think that this was a movie star. And the truth of the matter is, if this person had their way, they would be face down in a dumpster eating compulsively. They are gutter, bottom of the barrel, garbage can, back alley, compulsive overeaters. What they have a tendency to do is they do the pendulum swing. They pendulum. They'll go from restricting, where they're severely underweight and they're high as a kite from restricting and the anorexia. They'll go to bulimia, and then they'll swing to the other side where they're eating compulsively and they're very puffy and they're very, they've gained weight. You're not used to seeing them that way. They're exactly the same as me. I can't give you their perspective because I've never lived it. I can point it out through observation, but I can't tell you firsthand what that is like because I have never lived that side of it. But it is there. And some of you, because we're 144 people right now, some of you come from that direction where you will never be 300 pounds. You're more likely to be severely underweight. Same illness, different sides of the same coin. Everything is exactly the same except for the manifestation. Some get the high by consuming, some get high by anorexia, by restricting. Let's continue. At first, some of us did not believe we needed this help. We thought on the whole we were pretty good women or people, capable of being nicer if our husbands stopped drinking. Let's stop right there. Remember I told you that we lie, we assign blame, we keep score, and we fight battles that just don't exist? This is it in its form, in its manifestation of reality. If you didn't nag me about my weight, I wouldn't be eating. Baloney. If you didn't nag me about smoking, I wouldn't be smoking. Baloney. Here's an age-old question. Why do you eat so much, Harlan? Because I'm a compulsive overeater. Because I am a compulsive overeater and food does something for me that it does not do for you. Not you, them. It does something for me. If I didn't have Mo, Larry, or Curly to blame that they made me mad and they treated me horribly, I would blame the wind or the lack of wind. I would blame the sun or the clouds. I would blame the rain or the sunshine. But I'm going to eat because I am a compulsive overeater and I have an unnatural affinity to seek out that effect that food gives me. And that is a starting point so that we can have an understanding of what the behavior is and where it comes from. It does not come because of the actions of others. It comes because the disturbance is you are not feeding me M&Ms at this particular second. And I'm going to get nuts. And when I'm nuts, I'm going to look at anything on the radar that I can use as an excuse. But the reality of the situation is many times we ate because people did stick to the script and it still didn't make us happy. There were times where they did stick to your script and it didn't make it any better. Let's move on. I hope this is helping. I hope this is explaining. But I'm at the bottom of 116, middle of the paragraph, but it was a silly idea that we were too good to need God. I need God. Whether I'm eating or not, I need God. Whether I'm sleeping or awake, I need God. Whether I'm left or right, I need God. I heard an old expression, 65 years ago when I was 2 years old. They said, rich or poor, it's nice to have money. In the disease or in the recovery, I need God. No matter what the situation is, I need God. Now we try to put spiritual principles to work in every department of our lives. In other words, that sentence, now we try to put spiritual principles to work in every department of our lives, is a reiteration of the last part of step 12. Practice these principles. What are the principles? The principles are the steps in all of my affairs. This is a reiteration of the 12th step has 3 parts. Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of the steps, part 1. Part 2, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics. And number 3, and practice these principles in all of our affairs. This chapter, to wives, is one of those affairs. It's about the spouse. It's about the people closest to us. Some of us don't have spouses. Some of us do. It doesn't matter. There are still going to be people close to us, and they are going to piss us off. They are going to make us mad, or they're going to make us glad, or they're going to make us proud, or they're going to make us sad, or they're going to fill us with awe and wonder. And no matter what they fill us up with, there's always enough room to kill myself with food. Remember the old commercials? There's always room for Jello. There's always enough room in my ego to kill myself with M&Ms, the ones with peanuts. Obviously, the people that buy these other ones, these are not Jewish people, the ones that buy the plain M&Ms. But I'm talking about M&Ms with peanuts. But the bottom line is still this. This sentence is a reiteration of that third part of step 12. Very, very important. When we do that, we find it solves our problems too. There's no downside to working the steps. There's no downside to needing and wanting and chasing after a relationship with God. And God begins to heal me in areas that I didn't even know were broken. And as this disease putrefied my life, as this disease murdered my dreams and crushed my spirit, and as this disease emasculated me physically and emasculated me mentally, and it embarrassed me and it dragged me through pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization, as it made me alone, as it made me the butt of jokes, and it made me an object of ridicule and pity. As it did that, God was crying too. God cried when I cried. God felt my loneliness, and he sent me a book, and he sent me a fellowship, and he sent me people that really gave a damn about me, because I had nowhere to go. There was nowhere for me to go. I had tried Tops. I had tried Weight Watchers. I'm not denigrating the pay and ways. They're wonderful. And there are many, many people who get a lot of wonderful things as the result of being members of those things. I'm not denigrating those things. And I'm not saying they're bad. What I'm saying is the only relief that I got was here in OA. I lost a lot of weight. I was a Weight Watchers king as a teenager. I was the Weight Watchers king when I was 15, 16 years old, 14 years old. They brought me down to the Pitt Congress Hotel in Chicago. And the Pitt Congress Hotel, for those who don't know, is beautiful. It's a gorgeous hotel. It's one of the, now I think it's not, then, I mean, it was a Hilton, but it's a beautiful hotel. And they traipsed me out, and I had this ribbon king. I looked like Miss October or something, you know, but I ate on the way home. I ate on the way home from that thing. So this was the only thing that worked for me. And it will work for anybody who works the steps. The ensuing lack of fear, worry, and hurt feelings is a wonderful thing. We urge you to try our program, for nothing will be so helpful to your husband as the radically changed attitude toward him, which God will show you how to have go along with your husband if you possibly can. And God will also show you, oh, it's not 10:43 yet. Really? Oh my God. Every time I look at the clock, I get like shocked. But anyway, he will show you how to have a radically different attitude about yourself. And this is where it starts for me. Yes, it gives me another way of looking at others. And yes, when I realize, hey, it's a disease, and there are people who are dead who had this disease, who I miss very, very much, very, very much. June 23rd, just the other day, was my friend Sherry's birthday. Sherry was from Detroit, Michigan. She moved to Chicago. She got her advanced degrees in psychology from the University of Chicago, which is on the south side of Chicago. And she was a dear soul. And she and I met in OA. We met at the Illinois Masonic meetings in Chicago. Illinois Masonic is a hospital in the city. And dear soul, And she was brilliant. I mean, she was brilliant. She had an intellect second to none. I mean, anything that you told her, she just drank it up like a sponge. She was just amazing. And she died in her condo at 400 pounds alone. And they didn't even find her for days. And she was alone up there dead. And my heart bleeds because I miss her every day. I miss her laughter. I miss her love of the color purple, her love of blues music. She would go into the most unbelievable areas of Chicago in search of blues music. She didn't care. She went and nothing ever happened to her. And she was just as happy could be. And she would go, if they had live blues music, she was there. And the world is much less artistic because she loved art and she was an artist and she loved the Art Institute. And anywhere there was a craft show or an art show, she was there. I mean, that, and the world misses people like that. And she was taken away probably 25 years ago. My daughter's 26, so about 22 years ago, she died. And I miss her very much. And I have another friend died of his alcoholism. He was in his 50s. The saddest words of tongue or pen are these few words: it might have been. We're here for such a short time, such a short time. It goes by, my God, I look in the mirror sometimes. I'm 67 years old. And I think to myself, who is this old bastard looking back at me in the mirror? Because in my mind, I'm 8, I'm 9, I'm 7. I mean, I'm still thinking that, come September, the Wednesday after Labor Day, we're going to have to all go back to school because that's what we do. We go back to school. And I don't know, do I have homework, or maybe I better call somebody to see if I'm not missing something? Do we have homework today? Did Mrs. Sign give us homework that I'm just not aware of? And I'm 67, it goes by quick. And the very, very beginning, the genesis of that relationship that I have with me today and with God and others begins with an acceptance that I have a disease, that God will pull me through the disease, and others are human too. And what are we pointing back to? Because everything that's important in the big book is very, very repeated. A, that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives, acceptance of the illness. B, that probably no human power could have relieved our compulsion. And C, that God could and would if he was sought. Does that sound like page 60? Gee, I hope so, because that's where that is. It says on page 60 that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own life, that no human power could have relieved our alcoholism, and C, that God could and would if he were sought. How do we seek him? By working the steps and helping ourselves and helping others. See, the easy thing to say is help others. Yes, very important. But you know what I see too much of? People who delve into 12 and forget 10 and 11. They forget their own needs, that they have to be taken care of too through the working of the steps. And they're hanging on to resentments, and they're hanging on to fear, and they're hanging on to old ideas, and they're trying to be of service when they can't get out of their own way. They too need God's help. And I had a very gruff man in Chicago. He is also dead. And he was very instrumental in my progress. And he was big and mean. And he used to poke his finger in my chest. And we would meet every Saturday at the Parthenon in Chicago on Lincoln Avenue. And at the Parthenon, I would always get there first. And he'd point his finger in my chest. And he would say, "Are you out of ideas yet, kid?" Because remember, I was in my 20s. Are you out of ideas yet, kid? Because if you're not out of ideas, I ain't going to waste my effing time with you. Are you out of ideas? And he'd make me answer him, yes, I'm out of ideas. And then he'd say, okay, we're going to see. You're going to have a chance to prove it now. I got to be out of ideas. I got to quit hanging on to those old ideas. What does it say in the St. Francis prayer? By dying to our old ideas, we step into eternity. We have to let those go. Very, very important. Ask Fred and Wilma or Betty or Betty and Barney. Sorry, I am getting old. I ask Betty, Barney, ask any of them. They have to let go of their old ideas. They're cute. They look over my shoulder. Okay, we're on 117. I told you I was crazy today. I don't know what happened. I think I got up and took my crazy pill. Okay, if you and your husband find a solution for the pressing problem of drink, you are, of course, going to be very happy. Not all the time, unless you work the steps. But all problems will not be solved at once. Seed has started to sprout in a new soil, but growth has only begun. In spite of your newfound happiness, there will be ups and downs. Many of the old problems will still be with you. This is as it should be. You know what? I came into this program owing a lot of money. I wrote a lot of bad checks, and I wasn't making enough money to cover my life. And I was in bad shape. My car got repossessed a couple of times, and I was living on bad situation. I was living in a bad situation. And when I got sober, when I got abstinent, that was still the case. And then I relapsed, and I still had a sick child. My daughter was very sick when she was a kid because she was premature and her lungs were not fully developed. She has asthma to this day, and she has all kinds of respiratory problems. And when I heard about this corona being something that affects people with compromised respiratory situations, you can bet your life I was thinking about my little daughter. My daughter lives in Brooklyn now. She lives in a place called I don't remember if it's Crown Heights or Crown Point. Crown Heights.
Crown Heights.
Crown Heights, thank you. She lives in Brooklyn, New York. And she has a very compromised respiratory system. She has to go in her purse. You can always find the little inhaler, the little, the thing that you see they do. She has to have that with her because if she gets an asthma attack, it's not a pretty picture. It's not a pretty picture. So I was very concerned. That's still the case. That's still the case. And there are other factors in my life that no matter whether I'm eating or not will still be in place as well. Let's continue. Page 117. Oy vey. The faith and sincerity of both you and your husband will be put to the test. And how will it be put to the test? It will be put to the test because things are going to happen in this world that are going to scare you, and they're going to make you mad, and they're going to make you doubt. You've got to hang in there and be steadfast. You've got to be steadfast in your belief that if you will trust God, things will be fine. Yes, you didn't get your way. The person that you love may have passed away, or the person that you wanted may have broken up with you, or the pet, or the flower, or the whatever. Things are not going to always go my way. They're not going to go my way. But what will I do when they don't? What will I do when they do? And I have eaten railroad cars full of Chips Ahoy cookies when things went well for me. So being put to the test means you're going to be alive. And in Bill Wilson's story, toward the end of the story, at the top of page 15, he talks about that he almost went back to drinking, that there were challenges that made it so that he almost went back to drinking. That's why 10 and 11 are so critical, and 12 are so critical. You cannot expect yourself to stand in there with jealousy, to stand in there with fear, to stand in there with anger and be able to fight off the urge to eat food. If you could do that, we wouldn't know you. Let's continue. These workouts should be regarded as part of your education, for thus you will be learning to live. And as you learn to live, that means you're going to be doing steps and steps and steps and steps and steps and steps and steps. And as you continue to do them in 10, you will continue in 10, improve in 11, and practice in 12. You will become more aware of your own humanity and the humanity of the people around you, and you will grow into more acceptance. And as you grow into more acceptance, your relationship will be very, very wonderful with God, and it will be wonderful and harmonious with yourself as long as you continue to do the work. When you stop doing the work, you will backslide. Not because you're stupid, not because you're bad, not because you're male, not because you're female or black or white or Hispanic or whatever it is you are. It is because you are human. Clancy Imislund is one of my favorite AA speakers of all time. I miss him terribly. He should rest in peace at God's right hand. I will bet you that him and Chuck Chamberlain and some of the guys from the LA Pacific Group, and somebody promised to take me when I get to LA. They're going to take me to a meeting at the Pacific Group. But anyway, I know that Bill Wilson and Bob and Silkworth and all them guys are sitting around, you know, they're waiting for the 2:00 meeting or whatever they're doing. But Clancy Imislund used to say, you envision this like an invisible boat. It's an invisible boat. And somebody comes to you on the shore and says, get in the boat. And you say, I don't see a boat. And you get in on faith because you have nothing to lose. And the guy says, here's your oar, start rowing. And you start rowing the invisible boat, and the boat becomes visible. And then there's the kitchen, the galley, and then there's this, and then there's the sail, and then there's this. And the more you row the boat, the more glorious and the more luxurious the boat becomes. So you're in this beautiful yacht, and it's gorgeous, and it's everything you could ever want, and you stop rowing, and right away it starts to disappear. So in this program, there is no standing still. Is that one of the messages most of you get out of Two Wives? It better be now. It better be now. Because that's really the message here, guys. Keep doing the work. Don't stop. The disease will seize you when it senses complacency. If it senses complacency, you will be disappointed in the results. You will not be happy. And as much of a hell as you think the food will create this time, it's going to be worse. Why? The disease is permanent. The disease is progressive. The disease is fatal. I have a friend who lives in Tulsa, Oklahoma. He's a great guy. He says there's the 3 P's: permanent, progressive, and fatal. Permanent, progressive, and fatal. And he's a joker. He's funny. He's funnier than me. You will make mistakes, but if you are in earnest, they will not drag you down. I've made a lot of mistakes, but I'm still here. Instead, you will capitalize them if you keep working the steps. A better way of life will emerge when they are overcome. You will be amazed before you are halfway through. You will not know life until you've really given yourself to God in that way. It is the most fabulous way of life. Some of you come from Yale, and some of you come from jail, and some of you come from poverty, and some of you come from wealth. You come from Park Avenue or under a park bench. It doesn't matter. It does not matter. What only matters is, what is your spiritual condition? No matter who you are, no matter what you are, the wealth or poverty will not fill that hole in the soul that only God can fill. It's a God-sized hole. Very, very important. Now, before I turn it back to Carol, and Carol has let me in on a dreadful, dreadful secret that now I know I'm going to revoke her membership in OA as a result of that. But I'll let her tell you. I'm not going to tell you. But she has let me in on a secret, and I'm going to call for investigation of her credentials. But anyway, before I turn it over to Carol, I just want to remind you, yes, with the 4th of July weekend coming up next Saturday, yes, we are here. But on the 24th of July, which is my friend's birthday, actually, on the 24th of July, 23rd, 24th, and 25th, I'm doing, and I hope you will come, I'm doing a retreat for Spanish speaking members of OA. And this is going to be fun. This is going to be interesting. You can subscribe to this Zoom in either English or Spanish. In other words, if you were with me for the Greek retreat, which we did in 2 sections, 2 parts, or the Italian retreat, I would talk and then Barbara or whoever would do the translation. This is going to be instantly translated, just like the technology they have at the United Nations. And they're going to instantly translate it. So I will never have to stop. And you just keep going and you'll either hear it in English or you'll hear it in Spanish. And they're working on, now listen to this. This is unbelievable. This is like out of the space age, like instead of the Flintstones, the Jetsons, who I also have pictures of. But they're also working on getting people in Brazil interested in coming. So they're going to do Portuguese as well. So that's going to be interesting. So we are here next week. We are here the week after next week. We are here the weekend after that. And then the 24th of July, we're going to all Zoom into a retreat. So before I turn it over to our ex-member, Carol, I'm going to remind you of that, and I'll turn it over and we'll do Q&A.
All right. I'll confess to all of you that I don't like chocolate. So Harlan is very disturbed by this. That's it. Okay. So thanks so much, Harlan, and all who attended today, those doing service at this meeting, those listening online. I want to especially thank Sue L., who not only is a co-host, but our faithful treasurer for so long here. And there's a lovely gal named Lauren. You've never seen her. She builds the website. She does tech stuff that would blow your friggin' minds. And they, along with Maria F. with the lovely Irish accent, who you normally see here hosting, they literally keep this freight train of recovery moving forward. So I just want to say a special thank you to all of them. And again, I'll post more links and we're going to turn things over. The chat box is now open. You can start sharing your name and phone number and information. Oh yeah, and you know what I should do is stop recording. Okay.